Hey, AfterBuzz fans, thank you for checking out OJ Made in America episodes 4 and 5.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
So we are at the finale, the end point, episodes 4 and 5. Thank you for joining us, AfterBuzz fans. You are here to check out the recap of Made in America, episodes 4 and 5, the ESPN 30 for 30. I am your host, one of your hosts, Jill Munro. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, @StilettoJill. To my left is Gabriel.
Hey guys, as Jill said, I am Gabriel. You can find me on Twitter @G on TV, and you will find me celebrating the Cavaliers' 2016 NBA championship.
Oh.
Go Cavs.
I'm Josh Rodriguez. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram @Josh_Rodriguez_, and I like LeBron too, so I guess I'll be celebrating with Gabe.
There we go.
Okay. And you are the host, Jill.
One of
You are the
them.
lead.
And you've been killing it. And I'm Michael Rippe, and you can find me on social media @MikeRips. It's right here in the toolbar.
Hey guys, so episodes 4 and 5, they were very impactful, very different from the first 3 in that now we're into the heart of the trial where everyone usually feels like they pretty much know the story. We all know the outcome. We know that OJ was voted not guilty. Did you hear about that? So
Really?
really,
Wow.
that's what happened.
Crazy.
So we get to go back through the steps of the trial and see different viewpoints from the prosecution, from the defense, and their different strategies, and also how what they were putting out there lined up with the jurors' impressions. So let's start at the beginning. What was it about the trial maybe this time that you learned, maybe with the evidence or whatever, that you weren't quite aware of from before?
Regarding the evidence, I guess I didn't realize just how careless the CSI team was as far as the glove. Obviously became such a big focus and really one of the downfalls of the prosecution's case. But I think the mishandling of it, just the extent of it, being young when I first saw it, I wasn't aware just how important CSI was. But when I watch it now, it's like they really just dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah, I have to agree with Gabe. I'm actually pretty surprised at how much the prosecution messed up in a lot of cases. And not only that, just I wasn't aware of Ron Shipp, Mark Fuhrman, and how the defense took those people on and destroyed their character and made a stronger case for them. I didn't really know anything about that.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those points. The Ron Shipp thing about kind of how he switched into testifying against him, and also the really complete mismanagement by the police in the evidence collection, just across the board. Throughout the documentary that we've seen, the police have messed up from so many different angles. Investigations, questioning, capture of data, evidence. It's just unbelievable how many times they kept doing things wrong.
So let's start from impactful moments. We mentioned Mark Fuhrman, so he seems like a good place to start. Obviously, we know that Mark Fuhrman ended up having to come back onto the stand and sort of readdress some issues, as if had he ever used the N-word, his credibility was basically demolished by the defense. So in thinking about that, what do you think about Fuhrman's decision to take the fifth? And do you think that really should have impacted what the jurors saw, what they learned from him? Do you think that it should be taken into consideration as far as his credibility?
I think every time you plead the fifth, you kind of look guilty.
Yes.
That's the way I look at it anyway, no matter what the case is. I just think they painted him with this brush that made him like such a monster to everyone in the courtroom that it tainted the whole thing to me, at least.
And I agree with that about Fuhrman, but that's, I think, a broader point of this, that it looked like the defense was able to almost paint every person
Right.
that went up on the stand and turn their character into a serious question from everyone. And you saw it with Fuhrman. Basically, there was supposedly a long list of people that were going to testify, and that list shrunk right after Fuhrman because they didn't want to have the same thing happen to them.
It was actually after Shipp.
Shipp,
Shipp,
Yes,
sorry.
Ron
Okay.
Shipp. Yeah.
You're right.
But similar, definitely, they did a lot of character defamation of those who came up to testify. Mark Fuhrman, obviously the biggest point, but Ron Shipp certainly received his blunt of damage from the defense.
It was like a consistent theme of the defense's team. Every single person that was put on the stand, it turned into they were questionable at best.
Were you surprised to hear that Mark Fuhrman had a run-in with O.J. and Nicole years earlier? And did you think that that was relevant in sort of the defense's theory that, well, he could have set him up since he was one of the ones that was like, yeah, O.J. only lives a short way away. Let's go check him out.
I wasn't surprised, basically based on, because we've learned to this point just by watching this series that there's been so many different times the cops have been called, so just by chance, I'm not surprised that anybody may have already had a run-in with OJ.
Yeah,
I do think it's
Fuhrman's area.
I do think it's a stretch for them to say that he set him up, though. I think the whole theory of him setting him up is a stretch. You just have to prove, hey, it's possible, reasonable doubt. That's all. That's all. You don't have to prove that it was a stretch. You just have to prove that could have happened. That's it.
And sadly, I think what we kind of learned was that it didn't really matter what they proved. The jurors were kind of in the bag in a sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do
mean,
agree with that, 100%.
I think so, but at the same time, I guess, and maybe we'll get to it later. I also think that being fair, the defense did what they were supposed to do, and that is poke holes in the prosecution's case. So
I do agree with that, but I also do think that no matter what the prosecution put up, I still think, like, hearing those jurors talk, he probably would have been found not guilty still.
No matter what, I felt like, because it became so much more than a trial about did OJ kill Nicole. It was like that wasn't even really what this was about by the end.
It was, could the LAPD possibly botch evidence, set people up, and just in general.
And of course, the prosecution did nothing to help their case, especially. The moment I think that sealed it was when Christopher Darden messed up in basically the glove situation. That was never going to be a winning move, it seemed like. And so that was clearly, it just every angle. It was like the defense was great, prosecution was terrible, and everything outside of that was favoring OJ really from a juror standpoint.
Perfect storm.
Well, I was just going to say the most telling part, I think, from the jury's standpoint came from Yolanda Crawford, in that they understood the show that the defense was putting on. They were always aware of the show with the tie. I thought that was an interesting twist. That was something I didn't know before, that they went to that extent with the tribal colored ties.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, but the fact is that they understood that Johnny Cochran and them were trying to goad Darden into making the power move. And they understood that, you know what, you fell for it. And even if let's say the glove had maybe more questionable of a fit, they still understood it, and mentally, the way that plays on the mindset of the jury, that was just such a strong move, and they understood it, and I'm glad we had that testimony in the documentary.
So kind of going around, thinking about the testimony regarding Nicole's domestic violence accusation, well, not accusations, we know what they were, but all of that was introduced. Were you kind of surprised that the jury wasn't more swayed by that evidence? I know that one juror pointed out that just because someone is abusive doesn't mean that they're a killer. And while in theory I understand that, it's just, do you think that they took that information lighter, I guess, for lack of a better term, than maybe they should have? It didn't seem to weigh as much into the case as you would think that it would.
Absolutely. Like I said before, I think that no matter what the prosecution presented, that some of those jurors still would have found him not guilty.
Absolutely. And there was a couple points that struck me. First, we saw scenes of Nicole's sister, Denise, crying on the stand, and how OJ called her a fat pig. And it was just very sad. And then also, I was really disappointed by juror number 9. Her name was Cassie Best.
Yeah.
She mentioned that I lose respect for any woman that takes an ass whooping when she don't have to. And that just seemed like so not thoughtful.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone's getting beat up, it's not, no matter what their decision is, I felt so wrong hearing that.
There's no empathy for abuse victims, basically.
But I think with some people, and again, I'm not justifying it or advocating it, just trying to, build a bridge to explain, I think they feel like she had the means to leave,
get away,
to, move out of that situation, where some women really don't. And for her, I believe that she probably felt like that plays into the gold digger stereotype that the documentary sort of stayed away from, but is the undertone of why people may feel certain things about Nicole, maybe why she stayed, maybe why her family didn't intervene as much. I could be wrong. I'm not justifying it, but I think that plays a role into why she might have been so unsympathetic.
It was it's a fair
Gonna
point.
say, I definitely think you're correct, and I think part of it refers to the climate of the time for whatever reason. We obviously.
I don't know if that's a climate of the time. I think that is something that you would even hear maybe now, depending upon.
Well, I think it also obviously the lack of empathy for Nicole being an abuse victim is there, but I think I go back to what Cassie Bess. I want to make sure I get that. Cassie Bess said later about the African American community looking out for their own at the time, whereas that might be different. And we do know that there was this conflict of interest in that OJ was with a white woman, and I feel like that also played a part into it, on top of the lack of empathy, which I still find, how can you not believe that? But it was a fact of the case.
And I'm also saying this just to put it out there, like maybe Cassie was just looking for any excuse to.
True, that's a great point.
She might have had the same mindset as the defense, make Nicole out to be this or that, and to justify getting OJ off.
I just thought it was so like raw and cold. I felt for her,
and she didn't care either. She just had a
and she even like shrugged her shoulders.
Yeah,
she
kept it moving.
I mean, I kind of can get like that perspective, but it just seems so like in this situation so awful.
Right.
Just like even if she could have the means to get out, Nicole, but she's still getting her ass kicked. Oh, and so that just seems so raw to be like, I don't care. Like she just got murdered and her head is basically chopped off. It just was crazy. It was so real.
So we obviously know the defense took great pains to take everyone down, as we've said, that was involved with the prosecution's case from every level, from DNA, credibility, different times. I thought it was pretty revealing that OJ's agent revealed how OJ generated money during that time period to pay for his defense. They estimated that his defense cost $50,000 a day. I know we were quickly trying to do the math. The case was 266 days, so that's a lot of money. Not even going to try to count that really quickly, but $3 million is what OJ raised while in jail signing autographs. And I know that there was mention of Ron Goldman and his family, how unethical it was, and they had a problem with it. Do you have a problem with OJ while he is on trial, not convicted, generating income to pay for his defense?
I don't have a problem with it. I could see where his family's coming from, but I mean he's not convicted yet. He has every right to make money any way he can. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not pulling for OJ or anything like that, but I mean it's his right. We gotta protect the rights of the people, even if we don't like it.
I'll say it in the opposite way. I do have a problem with it. That doesn't mean he committed a crime. I think that's the only way for me to put it.
It's an interesting take. I actually don't have a problem with him profiting off of his own celebrity. If people will pay for it, it's capitalism. It doesn't matter where he is. He's allowed to. He's not breaking the law by signing anything. Even if he was convicted and he's still signing stuff, I don't have any problem with him making money. I mean, it sort of was like the people started to finance his defense in a sense by. Yeah. But the thing I found most interesting about him signing stuff in jail was the way they did it. How they took the sleeve or the number, just decal, and he would just sign that, and then they would bring that and press that onto a jersey as opposed to signing an actual jersey. Yeah. And the way that the football, like he just signed one. I thought that was really interesting, and like that goes to show you the detail that the director and producer Ezra did for this documentary that made it so good. Like that little detail was so minute and detailed, but interesting.
So while we're on the subject of that, let's talk about the Goldman family for a bit. This episode featured 4 and 5 actually featured Ron Goldman quite a bit, and his pain was palpable even all of these years later. Do you feel like, I know that Ron was often talked about as the forgotten victim in all of this, and his father and family for years and years, as we'll see later, stayed right there and involved even later on with the printing of a book that we'll talk about. Do you think that their involvement helped keep the prosecution honest? I wonder, just because I know that they were very vocal and very upfront, but kind of forgotten and except on the back end. And I just wonder, do you think that the jury even thought about Ron or the case or them in when looking over everything? Because it seems like even in that, no one mentions him really.
Good question.
I believe so, and I think that Yolanda Crawford's statements again that when they did read the verdict, the first person she looked at was Ron's father, Fred Goldman, and said that she understood what conclusion the jury had come to, but she never meant to cause that man pain. And I'm certain several other jurors felt the same way, but the facts are the facts. They did not feel that the prosecution did their job to prove beyond reasonable doubt. And I think that is a very tragic part of this story because obviously there's so many more twists and turns with the Goldmans, but at the end of the day, this is a man who lost his life. And I'm glad that the documentary stayed true to the fact that that was a tragedy.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, I don't think Ron was really looked at too much by the jury or anyone for that matter. I mean, I'm watching the documentary and I'm forgetting about Ron, up until I see his father, to be honest with you.
I honestly think that it's not even just Ron. I think that Ron was a secondary figure, but I think that the jury honestly started to forget about Nicole even. Because
good point.
It wasn't just Ron. It was also, I think Nicole was being forgotten about. But it was interesting to see Ron's father, Fred, and the figure that he played kind of through the trial and then afterwards. He never really gave up. He was really adamant about bringing justice to his son.
So, kind of circling back on the trial, we obviously heard a lot from Marcia Clark and her thoughts on the defense's tactics, what they did to sort of poke holes in the prosecution's case. And she said that she felt that the defense sort of attacking the prosecution's case in the manner which they did was almost immoral. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and think about that, because I've seen also a lot of people saying how, we even saw it at the end, sort of jumping ahead, that Bob Shapiro, after the verdict, distanced himself from Johnny Cochran and OJ and the verdict. So did you feel that the defense's handling and how they tried the case was immoral, that they didn't play fair?
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, the defenses, what they're supposed to do is win their defendant, freedom, or win the trial. And I think that was their goal. And while they played to people's emotions or whatever the situation was, they played it really well. And I think that Marcia Clark could see that. I think she's really good at her job, and I think she clearly understood what the defense was doing. And I think that she kind of was conflicted by kind of respecting it, but also it's going against her. And they're such a good team, and they're playing on all these little things that she recognized, but really couldn't do anything to change the idea and situation.
Yeah, I think Marcia knew that she was behind the eight ball from the beginning, to be honest with you. We go back to the jurors, like we said before, that some of them already seem to have their mind made up. All of the racial tension that's going on in Los Angeles. I think she knew from the beginning that, if this trial's about race, that she's in trouble. And I think that it frustrated her.
And I think it's important to note all the aspects of this case, the fact that it's a celebrity, the racial tensions, the fact that this is really the first big case that's being televised on, news cycle television. The normal rules, as we understand them for the American criminal justice system, didn't apply. That's not to say that the defense, I guess you could argue immoral, but not outside the rules. They didn't do anything necessarily that said well, you can't do that when defending a client. The fact is, it's a very unique situation. Yeah. It wouldn't be a textbook case of the criminal justice system, but this was the case that they had, and they just worked within the rules. And part of it was a show for the cameras too, and they played to that aspect of it.
And not even just the racial aspect, just in general. Like Mike just mentioned it. Your job as a defense attorney is to defend your client. Period. That's it.
They didn't do anything illegal.
Right. They didn't do anything illegal. Nope. It wasn't anything like that.
Whether or not you agree with them,
right.
I think they were within their rights to do everything. If anyone was immoral, to me, it was some of the jurors.
Yes.
That would be the only people in this situation that I could see as being immoral.
So let's move ahead to, the jury deliberated for a very short time and came back with their verdict. We heard Yolanda say, I thought about this case every night when I went to bed alone, no TV. We understand that they were sequestered, so those type of things. So once the verdict was in, we saw the reactions from everywhere across the country. Some of those things even looked like a Dave Chappelle skit. I guess there was some guy walking down the street with the green hoodie, and he was like, "Ha! How you like that?" Just off the horse
It's a
getting
good comparison.
I mean, it was. Yeah. It was kind of like, this can't really be real. Is this really happening here? But it was. So, what did you think about the reactions nationwide and just seeing the differences between white just viewers and black viewers and just the amount of emotion and raw passion that took over after the verdict? I mean, they were preparing for riots out there.
Yeah.
Well, they said it very bluntly that in a lot of ways, I guess it depends on where you fell on either side of the fence. I think that I understood the celebration, even if I didn't agree with, like, you know, what it meant, that, okay, he got away with murder, essentially, but you're still celebrating it because you beat the system. And so that was hard to understand, but that's the point I came to. And I guess, would I agree with it? Would I want to see that in today's day and age if something similar happened? No. But at the end of the day, I'm not those people who have felt that kind of persecution and discrimination, so I can't speak to that. But watching that, that's the conclusion I came to. And it was hard to watch in a way because you understood that they were celebrating someone getting away with a crime.
Yeah, I think that the reactions had nothing to do with the case itself. It really was just, Black America and white America reacting to the system that is, our justice system. And like I said before in our last show, I think that it was about Black America finally feeling like, hey, we won. We got one. It doesn't matter that it was a murderer. I don't care. Rodney King, I have a quote here. He said something, payback for what happened for the last 400 years. That's how they looked at it. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's how.
That's just what was that process. Right. So one of the central figures in both episodes 4 and 5 was Mike Gilbert, OJ's sports agent, who came on board to help him move the memorabilia. And he also had quite a bit of stories to share and, confessions about secret conversations. And in one of those things, he said that OJ was preparing for a guilty verdict. And he was telling all of his friends, listen, if I'm found guilty, I never want to see you. I never want to talk to you. Just leave me here. And Gilbert also said that OJ almost confessed to him one night. So as a figure, do you find Mike Gilbert credible? And do you believe some of the stories like that OJ was going to confess to him and that he didn't want anyone to come see him and just leave him in jails? Because that sort of seemed odd to me for OJ.
The part about no one seeing him in jail didn't seem that odd to me, actually. It seemed like what we've seen from OJ is that he can cut bait real quickly and move on without any kind of thoughts to the otherwise. So I could see that he, if he lost, that was it. He didn't want any sympathy, anyone coming to talk to him. So I could believe that. Now, how credible the agent really is, I mean, maybe the stories are a little skewed, but I thought he was fairly credible. You gotta always take a grain of salt, considering that it's not, you weren't there. So he was credible to a degree, I thought.
Because he also was, there also was some implication that he might have also been part of taking of OJ's memorabilia and the sell-off that happened later on that we'll get to. But so OJ comes home, he's acquitted. We see video of him driving all the way home, fans running up to the car, people waiting outside of his house. And then there's live video from inside the house that we have never seen. Yeah. It was sort of interesting to me that they were shooting this because I almost feel like they were shooting it with the thought that we're going to air this later. We're going to show this in some sort of capacity. How did you feel about OJ in the house after that? Because I feel like he went back into bad acting OJ mode, so to speak. Just even in his addressing of the TV when Bob Shapiro's interview with Barbara Walters came on, it still didn't seem sincere with his actions.
It just kind of makes you sick to me. It made me sick, though, because listen, I guess we can all agree that he did it. So to see him be so, boisterous at the TV, how dare you, and put on this show and put on this act, it in a way, it's like, this guy's such a psychopath. It turned my stomach.
I agree. It really did. When I think about it, you've been in jail, you've been in a cell. The only time you're really out is to be in that courtroom. You're put in an official prison van that takes you to the courtroom every day. And the first thing you want to do is throw a party, with several. Okay, close friends, yes, but come on, the entire entourage isn't a best friend for life of OJ. You know,
That seemed like a really OJ thing to me to do, though.
But I think it showed his insincerity at the situation, and that just made him look more guilty to me.
It was also said he never wept for Nicole or the kids,
I think that just goes to the further point that we've talked about, is that I think OJ, if he moves on quickly.
Yeah.
There's no living in the past or any of that. It's right to the next thing and be as boisterous and big. The one thing that I caught immediately also, that footage was probably being filmed on a big camera. This isn't iPhone camera time, right? This is
true.
So they had someone seriously filming it. It wasn't, someone just on a camera phone. And also, he said at that time, his primary goal in life was to pursue the killer. But he never did that after that. So I just thought that part, no matter where you fall on it, I think that if he said his primary goal in life was to pursue the killer. As time drifts on, never. Was there any pursuit of the killer at any point after that?
No.
Put it this way, you're crazier than OJ if you think the killer was somewhere partying it up in Miami.
It's just, if he didn't do it, it was weird to me that he said that was going to be his primary goal and never did anything to follow up on that.
So let's kind of talk about OJ, the post-trial years, and what he became. OJ was always, for the most part, a very straight-laced guy, at least to the public, a good guy. And after the trial, he returned to the black community, I guess the only place that would accept him with open arms. I have to admit, the shot of OJ at the church in the dashiki was a lot.
God.
Just a lot. When you think about the irony, this is a man who didn't want to acknowledge his blackness, and now his life is such that not only did he have to use his blackness to defend his life, he then has to go to a black church and don a dashiki and find, a home with these people that
acceptance.
he has shunned for so long because his old people wouldn't have him.
After watching so many hours of this documentary, I would not have believed that unless I'd seen it. That was the complete 180 he made. I was shocked.
But that also goes back to something that we've talked about previously, how much attention OJ needs and adoration.
Yeah.
He doesn't care where it comes from. So he had to go there to get it because it wasn't offered. And then he turned into his bad boy image. I guess everybody moves to Miami and becomes a bad boy, right?
Apparently.
That's what happened. So OJ was partying, the women. So what is always interesting to me is sort of jailhouse groupies or murder groupies that seem to attract people more once someone has gone through something like that. And then you add into the mix a Hall of Fame football player.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what was interesting to you about OJ the post years, and wait for the reality show and the rap career, because we're definitely going to talk about that.
It's like a midlife crisis. That's what it reminded me of.
Wow, that's a great thought.
That's what it just seemed like to me.
I was just, I was actually hurt because when I see that and you see, the man mentally, I believe by that point was already gone.
Oh, he snapped.
And I think the most telling thing, and it came from the agent, okay, we understand OJ didn't care. They all think I'm a killer anyway. Fuck it. All right. When they ask him, well, what about your kids? And that didn't faze OJ to stop. I thought that was very... I shook my head at the TV when I heard that. I'm like, how can you do that?
He's also getting up there in age. It's a lot of things. I think it's a lot of things. You're starting to fade out of the spotlight a little bit, even though, what just happened. Yes. The last time you were in the spotlight was because of a negative thing.
That was kind of part of it too, is that he didn't want to ever get out of the spotlight. He was trying to relive or get back to the moment where he was famous and he was in the spotlight and people loved him like they used to.
Right.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and to that point, because I know we have so much to cover still, I think that it is a cruel irony, the Kim Kardashian, that part of the story, that the day that so many incidents happened was the same day that Kim announces the reality show that we all know has become what it is. But I think it's very ironic to point out that the OJ case really helped to usher in this TMZ style of getting news. And ironically, no one has profited more from that than the Kardashian family. And you got to think OJ, who loved getting attention, who needed the money, it must have really affected him more than people may ever know.
Yeah.
So, talking about sort of that time period, we know that the Goldmans and the Browns sued O.J. in a civil trial, which they won, were awarded $33 million that they never saw a quarter of. And later, we know that O.J. wrote a book, If I Did It, to generate money that the Goldmans ended up suing for and getting control over and publishing, with the if very, very small in the whole thing. Now, I never took a look at that book. I don't know if any of you guys did either. But one thing that struck me was that in it said, he said, if I did it, I had help, which has always sort of been a question. You know what else was interesting? I was looking online as people were saying something, and they were discussing O.J.'s previous altercations with Nicole, where they were recorded somehow, whether it's 911 or whatever, and they were like, O.J. was very boisterous. How is it that that night when he went to go, whatever happened with Ryan and Nicole, he was stealth silent, deathly silent, no emotions? It's just sort of questions to raise. Like, could he have done it alone at that age with his knees, arthritis, things of that nature?
That's actually a good point. And on a 911 call, you hear him yelling too, though.
Yes.
So he flipped like that.
He also, I believe he didn't go to kill Ron Goldman. He went and he thought it was going to be one-on-one with Nicole. He could handle that, and then it just happened that Ron Goldman was wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
And basically when they talked about that too, the way that he had Ron Goldman in that area,
corner,
they call it a killing cage.
Killing cage. Yes. I mean, it just seemed like it was completely unfair. So it's still bizarre that no one heard and all that information.
Anything. So let's kind of jump ahead to 2007, Las Vegas. That's when O.J. and his boys, his new henchmen, buddies, his riders, had armed robbery. They went to go see this dealer. They had been set up by, what was the guy's name?
Riccio?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who was a slimy character. I personally believe he set OJ up because why are you recording a meeting with a hidden recorder in the room? Because you thought it might go wrong. Just the whole setup seems wrong.
It was Las Vegas, so lots of slimy.
Anything can happen in Vegas.
And it doesn't stay in Vegas if you're OJ's.
Apparently not. Do you think that realistically, when OJ went there, that he went there thinking that they're really going to physically get at this guy and that things could go left that quickly?
I don't think he was thinking, to be honest with you. I don't think OJ thinks anything. He's spur of the moment, whatever he's feeling at that time, and if you're in his way, he's going to do something about it, whether it's for fame, whether it's to hurt you, for anything. And I don't think he was thinking, to be honest with you.
Completely agree with that. I can't see how you could do any part of that plan with they weren't even really thugs. They were wannabe. They weren't even really wannabe thugs. They were one of them frumpy. I agree with that. He was not. He was already gone.
I think he was feeling himself when he gets to Vegas, and so he made the decision that I'm feeling myself. We're gonna go handle this. You could see how kind of planned or out of character. Like, it didn't seem like they had their stuff together because the surveillance camera had them walking all around. They
all around the hotel, just lost. It looked like a comedy,
Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
And truthfully, I think that situation he never thought was gonna turn out to be the type of things that went against him, possibly because there was no kidnapping and that type of stuff. Maybe by the letter of the law, but I don't think his intention was ever to do any of those type of things. He's just, what they said. At his point, he should have been a saint, and instead he was in sketchy situations that led to...
I mean, that's just ridiculous. So let's go to the conviction. 33 years, which matches the 33 million that Carl Douglas pointed out that they were awarded. The trial happened to send OJ to jail on the date that OJ was acquitted,
That's crazy.
20 plus years ago. So many coincidences. Do we think, because realistically, if you look at that crime, not that I don't think that OJ necessarily did anything wrong, but I don't think that it was 33 years worth of time wrong. I just don't. I think that everything about that had to do with the get back from the other trial case. So in that case, sort of going to what we talk about, is that something that you would consider improper? Do you consider that unethical? How do we look at that whole trial?
He got a retroactive sentence.
Yeah.
That is the best.
Basically.
I love that. I love it. It's so true. When I think about it, I don't think he should have gotten away with it the first time, so I'm glad that they got him on something. That may be immoral, but I'm okay with it. I don't know another way to say it.
I mean, I'm okay with it because I think that he should have been convicted originally, but I don't think that what he did in Las Vegas deserved any of the type of punishment he got. I mean, they were reading the counts, and it never stopped, and there was so much time that he was due, and all of that, I think, was a lot to just, they wanted to get back at him. That judge was ready to put him away for everything, and so they really put everything against him, and he couldn't be saved.
It's true.
So let me ask you, is it possible, because for me, I feel that the 96 trial, the right decision was made, but I still do feel like more than likely OJ did it. Do you feel like that's an acceptable thought process, or do you sort of feel like it kind of has to be one or the other? Because I feel this way even after watching the documentary and looking at the amount of evidence and everything that goes into that.
Well, after watching the documentary, I could see why someone would say that there was reasonable doubt. But in my mind, I think the evidence was so strong that it does make me sick that this guy kind of got away with it. It also kind of makes me sick, like hearing some of those jurors talk. I'm not gonna lie.
There was the one juror that stood up, and he was part of
With
Black Panther.
Yeah, we
Black
should point out
Panthers.
that there was a Black Panther on the jury. Once again, how does the prosecution miss that?
There was just a lot of things.
That's a gaffe by them. You're right.
But I could see that you could feel that way, because the prosecution, while the evidence was overwhelming, they made so many mistakes, and they didn't do their job, even though it was kind of against them, the jurors and stuff. They just didn't do their job well enough that I think that left a little opening to say, even though I think he did it, they didn't do the right things in proving it and whatnot. I just wanted to touch on another parallel that I found. They showed the demolition of the Rockingham, the house, and it kind of was like, I felt like that was a good parallel to OJ and his life, sort of. He created this amazing house that he had this, family with, and everybody wanted to be there, and it was beautiful, and it was the place to be. And then by the end, they were breaking it down, and it was out, and it was done, and it was like kind of like OJ. He got to the peak, and then he was crushed and taken down.
Yeah.
One thing to add, if you're okay with the decision of him getting off for the murder trial, then it's almost like the justice system worked in your eyes, right? But then the justice system, now, would you say the justice system worked for him in the civil trial where he got 33 years? I'm not the civil trial. The last trial where he got...
trial?
Yeah. So if you kind of have to be consistent where it's like, all right, well, it worked in this case. Didn't work in this case because he shouldn't have got 33 years.
Well, what I feel about that is that injustice is injustice.
Right.
So I'm not saying that, I couldn't understand if the jury had found him guilty. But I do understand, I think it's important to look at the evidence. If you want us to follow it, if we're supposed to be okay and to move on from the Latasha Harlins and on up to the Trayvon Martins and things of that nature, then you have to be okay with a verdict like OJ's.
Okay.
And that's sort of where I stand with it. I don't agree with any of them, and I think that the injustice should be, fought. Like, those type of things shouldn't really happen, but they do. And you sort of have to stand behind our system at some point and try and clean it up. If in those instances we're perfectly fine with it and we said that justice was done, or at least by the legal letter of the law, then we have to be in that case too.
Okay.
I agree with that, in that, it is true. The O.J. Simpson, just what we've learned as a case throughout all these hours of the documentary, is such a unique one, and you could even say a special, one-of-a-kind one. And we should expect more out of our justice system, and that's certainly something, not every case is going to be a sensationalized O.J. Simpson trial. Those that really impact our communities, I really would hope that, we have justice and we have a fair trial, and, that justice is served, and rightfully so.
And if I can just add my last take overall about, O.J. went on the Wendy Williams show.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh my goodness.
She said that being OJ'd was being charmed, and I completely disagree with that, because I think if you're gonna call being OJ'd something, it meant being killed. So I didn't like that she said it was being charmed. That was my take on that. I thought it was cool footage and stuff, but I didn't like that being charmed is considered being OJ'd, because I just thought it was the wrong connection to make.
The OJ effect.
Well, go ahead.
I was gonna ask a question, so if you want to...
I just want to say, in regards to that, throughout the documentary, I found a new sympathy and respect for Marsha Clark. I understand, she was the person who was supposed to be brought in to get the job done. And I think you could really tell from her reaction in the film that it probably eats at her a lot. But one of the things I loved is that she never let OJ's stature, any of that, really get to her. And that that last exchange where she runs into OJ in Vegas at the cafeteria at the courthouse, and she's still willing to go, you know, Mr. Simpson, and he hits her with that Miss Clark. She was never intimidated by that, and for better or worse, you know, I'm sorry that got away from you. And I found a new respect after that documentary and hearing that testimony.
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't, but I did respect the work that she put in through the trial, and some of the things she went through weren't fair.
All right.
Well, guys, this is it.
Oh, man, I
this
had so
is
much more to
the
say.
I know. Can you believe it? We are at the
man.
end. Really quickly, final takes. If you guys have any final takeaways from the documentary.
I just think that, you know, I hate to see race relations the way they are now in this country, and I feel like the OJ case might have actually made things a little harder to understand from white America and black America, you know what I mean, based on the reactions of the trial and seeing how, you know, I'll just leave it at that.
I would simply say that it was an amazing documentary, fantastic job by Ezra Edelman, so he should be applauded. If you guys want to continue talking about it, we can join us on Twitter and in the comments about it, but it was a really well done job by Ezra Edelman.
Agreed.
So, that's it. Emmy nominee.
Yes.
So I'm Jill Munro. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat at Stiletto Jill. Also, make sure you're following at AfterBuzz. Leave us 5 stars if you download this on iTunes. 5.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us. You could find me on Twitter at G on TV. Thank you for watching.
I'm Josh Rodriguez. You can find me on Twitter at Instagram at Josh_Rodriguez_. I got a lot more to say about this, so hit me up.
And I just want to say thank you to you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys for watching us for the 3 different parts.
And thank you to Michael for putting it out there for this panel.
And then finally, thank you to our engineers at AfterBuzz and everyone that helped produce this show. My name is Mike
Working
Rippe,
overtime.
and you can catch me on social media at Mike Rips.
Thank you.
We won't see you next time, but we'll see you in the comments.
We'll see you soon.
Take care.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.